the HPV vaccine's been in the news a lot lately.
Right.
Especially in the political race. It's always been kind of controversial anyway, but I think it's reemerged a little bit more. How effective or how safe is this for girls, and now that it's even approved for boys? I mean, you said you have a daughter, I have a daughter.
Yep.
That's not quite at that age yet, but
first and foremost,
we
need to go back to the origins of this so-called human papilloma virus. Is it really the cause of what they say it is? And how did they determine it? Now, I've covered this extensively on the Robert Scott Bell Show, having many experts, scientific experts, as well as my own analysis of this. And we realized that what they did is that they looked at basically tissue that had, cervical cancer, right? Cancerous lesions. And they take that tissue and then they examine it. And you would think if it is the cause of it, you would find it easily, readily. Oh, wow, look at all of this HPV right here at the cancerous tissue. Clearly, there's a relationship, but it didn't happen that way. Now, none of these medical reporters, I call them non-eggheads, they can't think for themselves. They just read scripts and they have maybe a doctorate by their name. Even Sanjay Gupta with CNN, the brain surgeon that he is, takes Tylenol when he gets the flu, which tells me all I need to know about his real intelligence. So, and I'm sure he's a nice man, but he's trained in a certain way, and they, gear themselves toward drugs in this sense. So they had to take these tissue samples, and then they have to take what's known as polymerase chain reaction tests or analysis, PCR. Kary Mullis got the Nobel Prize for his development of the PCR technique, which takes a fragment of genetic material, a very small fragment of DNA, and then amplifies it thousands and thousands and thousands. I mean, unbelievable amount of times, and amplifies it and says, aha, I think we know what's in here. Now, think about it. If you have to take a fragment of genetic material that you can't find by any other reasonable means and amplify it perhaps hundreds of thousands of times to say, aha, could it really be the cause? How, where, you couldn't even find it in a viable, well, we see a fragment, it could be, it might not be. And Kary Mullis himself has said about PCR, it's a good technique for some things, but not to identify the cause of an infection, because the cause of an infection or an ailment is there in abundance. That's the nature of infection. So I dispute, just so you know, the very nature of their claim that HPV causes it. Now, even if it did, let's talk about the vaccination. They inject this 3 times. We've recently found through the work of SaneVax, sanevax.org, they found that there is recombinant HPV DNA bound to the aluminum adjuvant in that shot. Very small dosages, but it may be binding to the genetic material, our own genes, and creating paralysis and other autoimmune reactions, serious autoimmune disease, and even death. Over 100 girls are known to have been killed by this vaccine, that even, the controversy of Rick Perry mandating it. Right now we're talking also about California, where the Democrats in Congress, and here I get political, but I give equal, I don't know, disaffection to the Republicans as well, who have, been bought by Big Pharma in many ways. But in this case, the Democrats in California have basically put a bill that's on the desk of the governor. I don't know, by the time people view this, it might be a done deal, we don't know, that would mandate the HPV shot for, young girls, and young girls as young as 12 can go in without parental knowledge or consent to the doctor and get this shot, and they don't even know it. I mean, these girls could end up harmed or killed, and their parents were like, what happened? They wouldn't even know. But it only covers about 2 or so strains of the HPV, and there are many. And again, in addition to this, it stimulates, if they're lucky, if they get what they want, the antibody to the human papillomavirus or a couple of the strains that they say are causing it. Now, is an antibody sufficient to prevent any disease? Well, I'm not a fan of that perspective, even though I'm not against antibodies. But let's take the example of chickenpox, right? Everybody knows about chickenpox. I had it. When I found out there were kids in the neighborhood that had it, I took my kids over to get it, the chickenpox parties, because it's a normal rite of passage. It actually strengthens kids to go through some of these ailments or diseases. And in this case, we get chickenpox, we're told we have lifelong immunity, we'll never get the chickenpox again. But it turns out that wasn't exactly true. As adults, if we're under stress, if we're deficient, if we're toxic, we can succumb to the very same virus that caused chickenpox in childhood. That's the herpes zoster varicella, the varicella virus.